Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I found some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I did something a little different today. It's by Noodlers, in their adorable little 1-ounce bottles. Fox. It's a red ink, it's a permanent ink, it's one of their, like, super eternal series of inks, which is, such are usually found in these tiny bottles. It resists UV light, it's pH neutral, it, resists lasers and bleach and acetone and blah 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 blah. You name it, it does it. In fact, I had a theory after looking at some of these paper tests, and I checked it just before I started recording. It reflects UV light, which means it glows under black light, which I have yet to test because I don't have a black light, but still, interesting. All the tests were done in this Kaweco Ice with a double broad, double broad steel nib. As you can tell, it's still in there because that's pretty much what I use this pen for. It's my Fox pen. And I've refilled it a couple times, as you might be able to tell. Now, I had a theory about the chromatography, which I will explain. Or about the ink, which I demonstrated in the chromatography. Now, I did this test the way I usually do. I put a drop of ink and then instantly dunk it in the water. And you get this tiny little like needle thin band that remained, and then the rest went up, and as you can see there's lighter red and then a darker red and then some orange, and you'll definitely see some of the orange in the test later on. But then, because this is one of those super permanent inks, I was surprised that I didn't see more water resistance, so I let it dry for a minute. Or not dry, but sit for a minute, and then dunked it in the water. And the water went really far, so the ink stopped. But as you can see, that circular band around where I put that initial ink got thicker and it got darker. And so then I tried it again after waiting 3 minutes. And the band got even bigger and even darker. So it's in that I feel like I should explain that when I do these writing tests, this ink is only dry for maybe 10-15 minutes. Like, it has not had time to mature inside the paper. And that's because, I'm trying to do this as worst case scenario as possible. Like, oh, you just wrote it and it just got soaked. Let's see how it does. So anyways, moving on. Top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. 6 seconds to dry, which really isn't bad considering this is a double broad nib and this is Clairefontaine paper. I said there's good flow. This is an excellently bold color. There are bits of shading, which I hope will come through. I mean, it's not a wild shader, but there are bits of it. There is a bit of a woolly finish, but that's quite common with most permanent inks. Water test, that's pretty permanent. And again, this only had like 10 minutes to dry. And that's really there. Didn't dye the paper much. But you might start to see a bit of an oranginess, which will continue. That was a drop test. And again, you can't see much of a change. So next is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. 8 seconds to dry. Come on, camera. And here I feel like there was better shading. Like if you look at the top of the Y and in the D, a little bit in the scribble. So 8 seconds on Rhodia, not too bad, especially considering double broad nib. Great bold color. I mean, look at this red. Bam, just red. No bleed feather spread. I said there was some echo potential because, again, this is a bold line and it's a pretty bold ink. Now we're starting to see some of that orange. Now, granted, that's really readable. That's really readable. It's still really there. But it is lighter. And you can kind of start to see that orange. Next is Tomoe River Paper. 13 seconds to dry. Again, really not bad considering it's Tomoe River and a double broad nib. Good flow. Still a very bold color. I feel like we get some of that halo effect that often happens on here. And you get shading. Not a ton, because this isn't a really super shady ink, but Yeah, good color. Again, great water test. I mean, how many times have we seen ink literally just disappear as if it were never there on this paper? That's still very bright. It's still very readable. But again, we're getting hints of that orange. And here is 20-pound copier paper. This is some of that terrible new copier paper. Just terrible, which you'll see. I mean, it's dries instantly. But bleed, feather, spread, very woolly texture, which I hope comes through. Yeah, it's, I said we've seen much worse bleed, but I'm not sure that we have. It's really quite bad. And here we really see that orange, which, I mean, it was really this paper that made me think, okay, let me see if this is UV, because there's something about the quality of this orange. I mean, it looks like somebody cracked open a glow stick. It's quite a vibrant UV orange. But still, not the worst feathering we've seen. Not the worst reaction we've seen to water. Pretty readable, still really dark, still really clear. Mead Notebook Paper, yeah, dries almost instantly. Still a pretty bold color though. I will say that this is a very bright red still. Yeah, but pretty much everything else is not great. But again, this was a double broad nib. Maybe in a fine nib it would do better. Again, really orangey water test, but still, that's fairly dark. That's fairly readable. It didn't completely explode the way we've seen some inks explode. But yeah, so. Lastly is Moleskine Notebook Paper, where some feather, some bleed. Not as much as I would have expected, but it's there. 5 seconds to dry, which is a little surprising considering how absorbed the ink got, because I mean, if you look at some of these giant, I mean, it's almost not like feathers, it almost looks like it's growing stingers. I mean, just like there are these random one long spiky things poking out. Again, the orange, but still fairly readable, still fairly dark, really not bad. And again, considering this is a double broad nib, we've seen much worse. So there you go for your consideration. Noodler's Eternal Fox Red ink, which I'm a fan of. I bought a whole bottle of it on a whim, and I'm glad that I did. I think it was worth it. It's an excellent permanent ink, and it's a red ink, which there aren't many permanent reds, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. And so, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.